So let's just get started. So
We could.
thank you guys again for coming on. This is a topic that needs to be had. So Makur Maker, did I say that correctly? Makur, is that how you say his name? Makur Maker, 6'11", rated number 16 by ESPN, 17 by 247 Sports. He chose to go to Howard over UCLA, over Kentucky, and over Memphis. And during a climate like right now, where there's a lot of racial tension, it's even more important for Black people, Black elite athletes like Gary and myself, to choose HBCUs. And so here's my question to you guys, and home team, you being the Morehouse man, I want you to take it off first. Why do Black athletes, elite Black athletes, choose predominantly white schools to begin with?
Well, I think it's a complex issue. I think the simplest way to start off answering is because it's what they see. You do what you see. And a lot of people are indoctrinated to what they see and what titillates their interests. And I think if you look at the case of Makur Maker, somebody said, hey, have you heard about Howard? Did you know Anthony Anderson went here? Did you know such and such went here? Do you know what it's like to be on campus? And he said no. So he took the trip. And I think, part of it is, what's in front of you, and then also what the opportunities for things to be in front of you. I say that to say, predominantly white institutions have much bigger recruiting budgets, and you can send a coach 2 and 3 times. You can send a coach from Atlanta to Oregon, the furthest city that you can think, or Washington, the furthest city that you can find. And, I think a lot of HBCUs have to do about word of mouth. It has to be done by people who lived and walked this tradition, and not necessarily because people have the same budgets to get into the homes and in front of the dinner tables and the grandparents and the aunts and uncles like traditional schools with bigger budgets have. So I think there are a lot of different issues, but I think what you see and what money allows to be in front of young people who are supremely talented, that will pique their interest and open their eyes up to maybe something they've never seen before.
Glaze, Maceo, what do you guys think?
Go ahead, Glaze.
I think home team hit on it. It's kind of like I call it the Puffy syndrome, the shiny things. The big schools got money, and they got money on top of money. So they can hit you, like home team saying, 2 or 3 times. And they also can give you little things that the HBCUs can, and that's that notoriety, that publicity, that TV contracts. Yeah. You guarantee with those big schools that every week on CBS, you're going to see them play on the SEC network. So we have to work a little harder at HBCUs, and recruiting is another thing. We might not can recruit multiple times a year. So there's going to be periods of time when our budget's going to say we can only go out and recruit. When I say we, I'm talking about HBCUs. But the shiny things, they can offer you money. The gear is plentiful. And when certain people are at certain levels, or 5 stars or 4 stars, certain things can be dropped at their door that other schools cannot drop at their door. Mm-hmm. So, but I think I applaud Maker, because if you're only going to be there 6 months, why not go somewhere in DC where you can do the butt, you can do all that stuff, have a homecoming that's going to be ridiculous. You're going to be the man. You're going to go from campus to campus. Everybody's going to recognize you. And you're going to see a whole bunch of beautiful people like yourself enjoying your 1 year basketball, because that's it. 1 year. You in, and you in the NBA the next year. So I say go ahead, man, have fun with it. That's my thoughts.
Heard?
Go ahead, do the butt.
I agree with everything what everybody said. We love stuff, and we know these things. Tennis shoes, the multiple jogging suits, shorts, and T-shirts. All of these things entice not only the kids, but entice the parents. I've come to understand that I think parents get caught up more in the recruiting process than the actual athlete, because this is now their opportunity to be seen and garner the attention that they probably never got while they were matriculating through high school and college, so we love stuff. We just love stuff. So I applaud this young man for doing this. I've always said it would be easier for basketball guys to do it versus football because of the numbers. And again, you're talking about a kid that already has all of the exposure that he needs because he's been on the Nike circuit. So he's good. People are going to come see him, and he will be in the NBA in a year. So this works for him.
And Macy, I'm gonna digress for just a second because I vent to him all the times about this. If I see one more dad in the gym with his 7-year-old kid lifting 50-pound weights, stunting his growth, I am going to go off.
Tab. Understand this, Tab, and this is we see it all the time. These parents feel like that they have a child and they're looking at through rose-colored glasses. Also, they see an opportunity for the family to get out. When, listen, so many variables between when that child is 7 years old till he gets to middle school through high school, hell, he might burn out by 9th grade. So, I mean, let kids be kids. I hate to see it as well. I trip dads up when I see guys do that. They walk by me, I stick my leg out 3rd grade style, see if I can trip them up a little bit. That's just what I do, though.
And
they can be mad when their kid. They can be mad when they can be mad when their kid's still the same height. They're 7 when they're 18.
Right.
Exactly. You're gonna be mad. He's still the same height. Yep. You sure is.
You know what? I digress, and I'm gonna save this for the next segment because this is a series that has to continue to be talked about. But I want to go to Gary and ask him one of the tough questions. When and how did this start? How did Black college athletes, elite Black college athletes, start going to predominantly white schools? What started this? Go ahead. Maceo, let's go. Well,
so
Gary, hold on. Gary's going to answer first. And then
go ahead, Gary. Give it to us. Give it to us raw.
Well, my background comes, so my dad played at Tech, and he played, back on Herschel. And it's kind of what home team said, like, you try and emulate what you see. So you see, Herschel Walker, you see, all the greats on ESPN or on television, these big time games, and all of them are going to the NFL. Kids growing up, and just like the parents push, like you're saying, they want to see their kids go, and this is their ticket out. And it's just kind of been a trend as to, well, let's just follow the money. For basketball, it's been Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, all the ACC schools, SEC, big time schools.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the money's coming in, and that's where the players want to go. Now you go to HBCUs, you might have one or two. I forgot. I'm more of a football guy,
right.
But you have one or two guys that'll come out, and the sheer numbers just talks, and it's all Power 5 schools, predominantly white institutions.
Facts.
Go to, and that's where they produce.
Do you feel like that pressured you a little bit?
No, so all my family ended up going to FAMU. So
my
first intention was, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to the FAMU camp. I'm gonna, pursue them. And I never heard anything back. And my thing was, all right, well, they're not interested. But thing I didn't know in high school was they didn't have the budget to recruit from Tallahassee to get to Atlanta to come see my game.
Facts. Mm-hmm.
To even have me on the official trip, because their budget, and that's a big thing I'm learning now working at Morehouse, is that if you don't have the budget to get out-of-state scholarships, they have to save so much money by recruiting players that are in-state versus
right.
And I learned that when I was at Furman, which was predominantly white school up in South Carolina. But you recognize that. You talk with the coaches and you get more insight as to, all right, well, we can't get this kid from North Carolina because our budget only allows this amount. And that's at a predominantly white institution. Now you go to a HBCU where they don't have that type of funding to do that type of recruiting, it's a whole different ball game.
And so, Maceo, you were about to jump in on that. What do you think? How did this start? When and how?
So my dad tells the story all the time. So, I mean, I can listen. I can close my eyes and tell the story. But so Bear Bryant, USC traveled across country in the 60s, and they put a whooping on Alabama, who was at this time, because of Bear Bryant, they were the dominant football team. Bear Bryant made the comment, listen, I got to go get me some of those. And he was talking about the black running backs and receivers that ran up and down the field against Alabama that day. And that's when the SEC kind of started saying, you know what, we have to stop fielding teams with all white guys, because our guys, they're good football players, they don't have the athleticism and the speed of these African-American athletes. And them bringing our kids into these schools start showing the facilities, nutrition, all of these things. Come on now. You know, your mom is living in a trailer and they're telling you, hey, move the family here. We can put y'all up in a 2-bedroom at that time. That's balling.
Yeah.
And it started from there, and it's kind of, you can still see the expansion of it because, again, we talked about FAM. Just take FAM Florida State. If you take a kid on a recruiting trip and you go see Florida State first and you go see FAM, or you go see FAM first and you go see Florida State, you see the difference in facilities, money, resources. That's what this thing is always about, the resources.
But in the case of Makur, and we'll touch on this in a minute, but in the case of him, he valued something completely different, which was the community at Howard. So I want to touch on that, but I also want to get, Glaze, and I want to get home team's take on this, because some people say that this started with segregation, the desegregation, should I say, of schools, where Black kids didn't have a choice to go to white schools before Brown versus Board of Education. So with them not having the choice, they had no issue with going to HBCUs. And then here comes the white schools coming in after desegregation, and now they can recruit Black students. So, could that be it? Could it be what Maceo said, like, home team, Glaze, what do you guys think?
Well, it's exposure and opportunity. Just like McClure Maker, he got a chance to be exposed to something he had never been seen before. And let's just, we just cut to the chase. There would be no HBCUs if things were done right in the first place. If there was no segregation, if there was no slavery, if Black folks were treated like human beings and had equal rights from the jump, we could go wherever we wanted to go, because you weren't allowed to go to schools because of your race. An entire culture and generations of people had institutions of learning to go to. So my parents are from North Carolina, and my dad tells me a story. I saw it years ago, and I can't find it because I was a kid when I saw it and desperately looking for it. But there was a documentary that chronicled Duke University back in the 50s and 60s, and they were all white at the time. Well, they would go and play North Carolina Central. And when it got to a point where North Carolina Central was beating Duke University,
right,
exposure and opportunity became available for African-American players. And it took one and two. I actually have one of my father's cousins was one of the second. He was the second player to get a scholarship at Duke University who was African-American. And it was, again, exposure and opportunity. So when young kids get the chance to see something that's different, you might look at it and say, you know what, this is totally different from what I've seen. I've never been exposed to this. To Maceo's point, if you get a chance to go to the Florida State locker room, which I've had a chance to see, you're going to be impressed. I haven't lifted weights in a long time, and I'm impressed. I haven't run up the ball in a long time, and I'm impressed by the Florida State University athletic departments, weight room. So it comes down to, exposure and opportunity. When it started was when, somebody said, you know what, we're going to give some folks an opportunity to come here and play, and people took them up on it.
And I think that's where, if you look at the NFL Hall of Fame, if you look at from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, a lot of the Black athletes were HBCU athletes.
Yeah.
That went to the Hall of Fame. It was a lot of Hall of Famers. You look at the guys, they're all Tennessee State, Grambling. They all were coming from there. And as TV revenue and capitalism started getting bigger in sports, they figured we need the athletes to make this change. If you go back and look at when UCLA and all that was playing basketball, they didn't have the athletes. Kentucky was all white back in the 50s and 60s during the Rupp days. They had to make changes because athletes were getting faster and stronger, and they weren't white people. They were kids growing up in the ghettos and in the country and things of that nature. So once you start seeing the money start getting bigger, that's when schools were like Maceo said. There's a very famous story that Bear Bryant had one guy sitting up in the stands while they played USC, and USC came and kicked Alabama's butt in Alabama. And Bear Bryant said, all right, y'all good with a Black player? Okay, we got one sitting in the stand. Let's go ahead and bring him out and let's play him. Changed the history of Alabama. It changed the history of Alabama football with that one game against USC. Very well documented, like Maceo said. But you start seeing once the game, because they were always fielding 70, 80,000 at these stadiums. But once they started seeing these schools from the West and started building out West with these Black players, they were like, okay, we need some of that in the South. and out here in the East because we ain't gonna keep getting our butt kicked and losing these national championships.
And so it seems like the common theme between all four of you guys is that it's money. It's chasing the money. And so my question to you, is it solely about money, or does racism still play a part in this? And the reason why I bring up this question is because I'm going to take it back to, I think it was 2014. Correct me on the year. You guys know better than me, but Grambling State's football team, when they boycotted and they ended up not playing a game, the coach got fired that season, but they boycotted playing football because of the inadequate facilities, because of the long road travel games and the schedule. And they just didn't have the amenities that they were used to. And so they were subjected to substandard conditions as athletes. And what coincided was that was a 57% decrease in the budget towards Grambling State that year. So that school no longer had that money to put into those athletic facilities. So we're talking about a state that is, you know, Louisiana, it's one of the southern states. You have a lot of racism down here. Do you guys think that racism still plays a part when it comes to funding some of these schools? And, you know, we can start with Glaze. You go ahead. You start first on this one.
I think racism always play a part because as long as the most of the capital come from white people and white organizations and white businesses, that will be that part. They pour into it. I remember going to a Georgia Tech game one time, and we sat there, and they had all their alumni and all the people who were donating to their organization. Checks, million here. The class of 2000 has donated 10 million here. I'm just looking like, that was 10 million here to me. We don't hear it at the schools, and it just drives that point of the capital is so important, because if you went the first time I went to Morris Brown and I saw our weight room, I almost cried because it was so much smaller than my high school weight room. But I went to Georgia Tech that was right around the corner, and I saw their weight room, and I was like, this don't make no damn sense. It's just a big part of it. If that wasn't, if let's say we put all things equal, and everybody, we had the same funding going through Morris Brown, Morehouse, and Clark that Georgia Tech had coming through theirs, why would we really want to go to Georgia Tech? I mean, yes, it's a fine institution of engineering, but I got pride.
Forget that. I don't even want to be engineer no more. Forget that.
But if I got my schools around the corners with all the prestige and all that we got, and we could compete and get the facilities and the money coming through our schools at AUC, we'll be going to Georgia Tech. We'll be going to Georgia. There are 7 black HBCUs in the state of Georgia alone. Savannah State, Albany, Fort Valley. They all, but we can't compete with the budgets of Georgia, Georgia Southern, and Georgia Tech. They just have it, and we don't. And that's something that they can count on. It's a big thing.
I'm not going to say it's racism why the money doesn't matriculate or find its way to some of the black schools. I think you do have a dichotomy as well. You know, certain HBCUs are state schools. So, for example, a lot of HBCUs that happen to be in Alabama, if you go to some of those schools, those are state school, and different laws, you know, protect and have certain amounts of monies allocated for state schools. But some HBCUs are private schools. If you look at Howard, if you look at Morehouse, those are private schools. They don't get state funding. So it is incumbent on the alumni to make sure they fill the coffers of the athletic budget in order to make sure that they are in an equal playing field, or at least have the basics of what they need. So I think there's some differences when the traditional institutions are state schools. LSU is a state university. University of Georgia is a state university. And so the monies that they get, you know, are a little bit different. The other thing is, and I think it's a conversation that sometimes is offensive, and, you know, sometimes people take it the wrong way when I say it, but, you know, athletics, in my opinion, is the entertainment wing for college. And it is not something that every college values the same. Princeton and Columbia and Harvard don't put the same focus and percentages of money into their athletics as LSU or Auburn or some of the big traditional schools. So people are entertained in different ways. And so those schools that find that they have big fan bases, big alumni bases, big alumni bases with millionaires and multiple millionaires, those schools, are the beneficiaries of the extra that goes to athletics. So until we get to a point where a lot of people who are graduates and people who walk the halls of HBCUs can put some money into our athletic programs, especially the schools that aren't state schools, I think we're always going to be in a situation where money is going to be something that has to be fought and scratched for in order to keep things going the way we need them to go.
And I want to stay on this same topic, but you mentioned something very intriguing there. You talked about the alumni, and I saw Maceo kind of shaking his head like who's, my next question was who's responsible. And when we talk about, the responsibility of Black college students coming to HBCUs, my whole thing is if the Black kids aren't coming there because they lack the facilities and the money and the gear to give these students, if that's the Black students' excuse for not coming and the HBCU's excuse for not coming is that the students aren't coming, we're just in this constant circle. And so my question to y'all is who's responsible for getting these Black college athletes to HBCUs? And Gary, I want to start with you because both of us, we're the youngest ones in this crew right here. So we're the closest to having made that decision. But you played at Furman, I played at Tech. Who was responsible for your decision? Do you feel like you were let down by not knowing about HBCUs?
I wouldn't say I was let down. My first thing, my parents always taught me was, make sure you have your education. It's the biggest thing. So when I saw, I had Furman, I had Furman, FAMU, Citadel, a bunch of like D1 AA schools in the Southern Conference. I was like, okay, well, Furman has, this prestige about itself that everyone always talks about, this, classical cultural tradition. So I went with that. And, but looking back at everything that went into the program, because it's a private institution as well, mm-hmm. They had, plenty of donors, kind of like what Maceo was saying, you've got, $1 million donors, folks have their own sections and all the rest of this on the parking lot, on the front lawn of the football facilities. And just to see that, and then I guess to go back and look at, a decision to go to a HBCU, and I don't know, kind of tying into the topic we were talking about a little bit before, but yeah. You're going to see a big change, I guess, with players as far as, talking about gear and shoes and all the rest of that, because now you can start making your own money for yourself by the NCAA, which is going to, next year?
I want to touch on that too.
So, I mean, you talk about Maker going to Howard. When he's on ESPN, he's able to collect his own coin for that. And now that's less money that Howard has to pour into that player that they can actually spend on their program. So, that'll be something to deal with the college and the player. And, what about players that aren't as prominent, aren't making as much? Maybe that money goes to them or whatnot. But
Mace, why so to your point, and we talked about this last night, mm-hmm. I wasn't recruited by any HBCUs. I got letters from Florida, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Miami. I got not one letter from an HBCU, and I don't know why. And so
you know how much those stamps cost? You know how much stamps cost?
They bought $13 a book.
You know how many
Tab, you ain't that young. Tab, you ain't that young. We had email like that back then. We still you had to get.
Look, I've had my
you ain't that young.
Since I was 14.
You ain't that young.
But Mace,
yeah, like you young and all that.
Y'all old, man. Y'all old. Anyway, I digress again. I'm just kidding. But Mace, I see you shaking your head. What do you think about all this? Who is this to blame? I mean, is it the parents? Is it the coaches? Like, are the parents supposed to know a history of HBCUs that we're just now being taught? I mean, I'm still learning stuff right now.
It's a mixture of everything. I was always, every high school that I worked at when I was into education and coaching, I was always the recruiting coordinator. One of the things I always did when we talked to the parents before the season started, would always ask, my simple question, how many of you guys went to college? How many of you guys graduated college? A lot of the parents, they hadn't. Mm-hmm. So with that, we already kind of have a strike.
Yep.
as far as getting information to the schools, funneling the information back to the kids, when you call a HBCU, I will call fam. I'll call Bethune. I'm like, hey, I have a kid here that really likes your school and would really, want to come take a visit. One of the first things that one of those out-of-state schools would say was like, well, send me his film. We're trying to recruit in-state kids first because of tuition, because as we know, FCS schools, which are most 1AA Division II schools, they don't give like a full scholarship. Right. A lot of the scholarship is based on is merit based. You have to fill out all the forms, and you basically get they basically give you the extra dollars that all of your FAFSA don't cover.
Don't cover. Yeah.
So that's a big deal, because you have kids thinking that they're gonna get a refund. Like they see their Power 5 brethren get their housing check back, get their food. So you got a lot of guys who probably getting $2,500, $3,000 a month, or they might get their semester check. Like my cousin that plays at Kentucky, his semester check is about $9,500. So
that's a lot for a college kid.
Right. But think about it. He has partners that go to Clark. He has a partner that plays, at Bethune, and they sitting there like, wait a minute, you got what? So that the disconnect and the lack of knowledge, trying to educate parents on the recruiting process is something we have to continuously do, because really and truly they don't know, because a lot of our kids, think about it, they don't really get serious about going to college if they don't have college educated parents until like their junior year, when they like, oh, I got a chance, I might can go to school. But now you sitting in your junior year and now you scrambling, when this is probably should have been your process. Me and Glaze, we talk about it all the time. Your recruiting process starts the first day you step foot in that high school.
Yep.
Your mind has to be on, hey, I might can get a scholarship. Let me see what's out there for me athletically and academically. So a lot of it, we all share blame in it, but the HBCUs can do a better job of reaching out to kids like you, Tab. They probably didn't recruit you because they probably were like, yeah, she probably, we hear she going Power 5, so why am I going to even recruit her?
And also, I want to say this, Tab. I want to add this, and I want to disagree with Home Team just a little bit. And I know he said it's a controversial topic, but I know everybody considers the entertainment, but when the separation of sports from the Power 5s into the PWIs and HBCUs came, when sports became a business for a lot of these schools, and it became a money thing, and it became a business. Even though it is entertainment, some schools that like those Ivy League, they've decided sports is not the biggest thing for them. But a lot of these schools, a lot of buildings are erected on campuses because of the money that's coming out of these athletic programs. If you go on Georgia, I've seen Georgia build many buildings in dorm rooms because of the money they made through tournaments and big time games and CBS contracts and things of that nature. CBS is not paying $1 billion for nothing. They are paying it because they want that sweet 16 and an Elite 8. It drives business, it drives advertising, it drives money. And the money that comes from those big schools is big business. And that's when the separation comes. So when you got power and you got business and you got money, those schools are going to they're going to work a lot harder to get the top athletes, which are a lot in our neighborhoods, to come to their school. And so when a Tabitha, who's a 4 or 5 star athlete, I'm sure you were 4-star down there in Miami. You're 5, you're doing your thing. I hate to say that, HBCU is going to be like, why am I even
in college?
Show off.
Oh, show off. They might have been like, we ain't got no chance to get her because they're going to come at her a little harder than what we can. So we're going to hope she maybe sits back and wait for us. But our budget is about $1,000. And you got to look at it. A lot of these HBCUs got 1 or 2 SIDs. Sure. They don't have an SID program or SID group. They have 1 or 2 that's working their butt off to try to get this information out there to you.
But to some of your point, Glaze, I think young college aspiring athletes, they are attracted by the sports. They are attracted by the programs. They're not attracted by the history of the school. I don't think anybody who's a 4 or 5 star cares about the history of the school. They're going because they want to go play football, and when they come out of the tunnel,
can you get me to the NFL?
People. Yeah,
you get me to the
everybody.
NFL.
Whatever home
My
team, you went to Morehouse, y'all got all that money from the school. I don't want to hear nothing.
Which is crazy. Hold on.
Good
Time
point.
out. Time out.
I don't want to hear nothing for home team, man.
What we're doing is
I want to ask
using
home
that
team this.
money.
I'm glad you brought that up, Glaze.
I'm glad you did too.
I want to
I'm
ask
glad
home
you
team
did
this,
too.
because
No.
one of the things.
Mace, we're about to swing it right over because I'm gonna tell you right now, this brother right here, my boyfriend, who I'm proud of, Gary, he is now the new strength coach in Morehouse, right? Got the job back in February.
Yeah.
Has not been hired full time yet. To the point where me and him were living together. Their weight room, I'm not gonna show you guys pictures.
We've
It's
seen
the
it.
same weight room. We've been in there.
We've seen it.
It's ridiculous.
It's the
We've
same.
all
We've seen it.
Did they fix the floor yet?
When Denzel's son was playing, he donated a brand new weight room. That was back in 2006 or 7 when he was playing.
It might have been earlier that. And he bought lights.
The same stuff is in there.
Same stuff to the point where me and him are living together. He takes his own paycheck and decides to put money into the weight room. And I said, hold up, bro. I said, no. I said, that money goes into this household. If Morehouse does not want to commit to putting money into their weight room, why should you care? And that's where my question is, okay, I get it. The Power 5 schools, they have the money, they get to show off and do all that other stuff. In the case of Makur, he chose Howard because of the legacy, because of the alumni, because of the Black elite that was there that weren't athletes. And so my thing is, are we really giving HBCUs a cop-out when we say, oh, well, it's really about the money and we ain't got it, when there are things that they can do, like fixing broken mirrors in a weight room and not having like rusty weights on athletes' shoulders. My whole thing is they can do that kind of stuff. That's tetanus shots they might need to have if they go in that weight room.
That costs money. It costs money, and it goes to what Glaze was saying. There is a big business. There's a dichotomy in sports when folks have money and when folks don't. When folks have money, say the University of Georgia, the school runs itself, the endowments they get runs itself, and sports and football and the gym dogs and the baseball team are a separate coffer. When you're talking about a smaller school with a smaller budget, the coffer is all of the same, and sports is a part of the larger coffer. So it really goes to what funds and finances you have and also what you value. And you're right, Glaze. Morehouse just got a couple of nice checks that's certainly going to help a lot of people. But Dr. Thomas has earmarked that money for things that aren't for sports, right? And because my partner, Joe Hamilton, said, oh, yeah, y'all about to be getting a new field. And I said, no, I don't think so. That money's been earmarked for other things. So it also depends on where you rank sports, where your money is for sports, and then how you value the things together.
And that's what I wanted to ask the two Morehouse brethren on this panel here, one coach and one alumni, because we know Morehouse, the endowment for Morehouse is very nice. We know that. How do you guys feel? Because when they made the announcement that they're canceling sports, one of the first things everybody said was, well, they technically can dip in a fund and basically pay for the entire season.
See,
but play who?
So,
what does the budget look like for the other guys you got to play? What kind of vans are they going to rent? How many games are they going to have to cancel? Those COVID shots 3 times a week for all your fall sports going to be about $400,000. How much of that money is really being efficiently used is what I would say. Gary, I would let you speak. You can speak better to that than I can.
Because even you talking about the shots, I had a conversation with the interim AD because we just got a new athletic director. Who was it? Curtis Campbell. He started July 1st. And we were talking about that, and the big thing that me and the associate AD were talking about, Dr. Phil Thomas, was about the shots. And he was like, well, I was at Georgia State last year, and, Georgia State, they get their test for free because it's part of, I guess, with the
state.
Yeah,
it's a state school.
So they get tested as much as they want. They get tested, every 2 weeks or something like that. Whereas Morehouse, you've got to come out of pocket if you're going to do that. And then another thing, talking about the budget and, you know, Morehouse has this pristine where you got the money, you can go reach into this endowment and pay for this. Well, last year they didn't have a strength coach. It was coaches like that are on staff that were working the players out. And I got there in February, and it's been a back and forth, but, you know, the biggest thing I've heard from coaches and players is, hey, it's more so just the fun. It took us 3 years to get new jerseys. And that's just because, you know, you see, you know, $40 million here, $40 million there that's donated to the school. It's kind of like what home team's saying. It's all about where the importance is. And if athletics is, you know, attached to the school versus the school being attached to athletics, it's really difficult to how to, I guess, shuffle that money around. And you go into COVID-19 and quarantine, it's like, all right, we got to furlough players, and you're like, all right, well, we got to start looking at coaches and, all right, athletics, who's bringing in money and whatnot.
See, my problem is, why can't you do both? Why can't HBCUs do both? And you guys mentioned something about Morehouse getting the $80 million and they're not allocating it to the sports program. Why can we not be elite in Black athletics as well as Black excellence? Like, I feel like there's room for both. And for HBCUs, I just feel like they focus on solely, okay, creating Black doctors, lawyers, judges, which is important. That is completely important. But we can do both. Why not invest in both? And my whole thing is, Morehouse just got $80 million. I'm not over their budgeting program, but I want to know what is the difficult issue in securing a strength coach or your sports program to make sure that you have that in your back pocket and that more elite Black athletes want to come to your school. You're in Atlanta. You already beat one thing. You're in Atlanta. Everybody wants to be here. Use that to your advantage. Why can we not do both? And that's what I want to know. Like, why do you guys think that's a problem? Why we have an issue with creating elite Black people when it comes to doctors, lawyers, attorneys, all that, engineers, and HBCUs feel like we can't do it when it comes to athletics at the same time?
Home team does a great job of doing this. Every now and then on his Twitter, if somebody rub him the wrong way, he'll hit you with one of his favorite words, which is resources. And it's priority. Athletics at HBCUs, I mean, let's just be real. They don't fall at the top of these lists. And if we're going to have this battle cry, so I've said this for months now. When we got emotional and we started talking about send our kids to HBCUs. You know, that was the battle cry. And I continuously said, we're not ready to have that conversation. And the reason we're not ready to have that conversation is kind of like what happened when Morehouse, then the SIAC said they're not going to play. Now the MEAC just announced today they're not going to play. The SWAC is making their announcement on Monday. Resources, until we pump the proper resources in our athletics and make it a top priority, only then will we see the change. When we talk about McCoy, he already has all the exposure that he needs. Think about this. If the NBA, and I think they're going to do this within the next 2 years, if the NBA go ahead and say, listen, we're going to just allow these guys to go to the NBA, because you see guys they don't want to go to college. They opting to go to the G League because they don't want to go to class. Why am I going to class and I'm only going to be here 5 months? Once the tournament over, I'm out.
Yeah.
We have to make it a priority.
I think we kind of skating around the issue. Not only in sports, big sports, there's a lot of money coming from. We don't control our own media either. So, where are we going to play at? Are we going to watch it? I would love for us to, but right now, CBS, like I said, is pumping billions of dollars into the Power Five. The Power Fives are going to play this fall because they have other things that need to. TV needs TV contracts and things of that nature are going to make them play. Morehouse, let's be real about it. The reason why they fund into other things is because they're not known for having a great football program. They're known for the doctors and lawyers that come out of that school. So why would
Morehouse man?
Give them credit. You know, they got the home team that come out of there. So we got to keep
my dog. That's my dog.
See, but the other thing to where you're going, Glaze, is that exposure. And I have never seen a Morehouse commercial. Never. I've never heard a Morehouse commercial on the radio, ever. So what I know about Morehouse came because my father went to Morehouse and my brother went to Morehouse, and my father's friends and my brother's friends went to Morehouse, and Spike Lee went to Morehouse, Sam Jackson went to Morehouse. So it was the people and the connections that I made. It wasn't CBS pumping out a commercial during a Morehouse football game that they already paid rights to have it. So I think we're having a discussion, and it's a chicken or the egg argument. Do we find a way to get resources and monies pumped into HBCU athletic programs and try to attract students, or is it going to take more McCour makers, or maybe an Anthony Edwards, or a generation, or even not a generation, a class or two of young people to say, hey, I want to give this a try, and maybe that will get extra eyes, extra monies, extra games on ESPN, extra resources into those coffers. It really is a chicken or the egg argument, and I don't know, if you're a kid, you only have so much time, so many games, and so much eligibility. I don't know how to ask an 18-year-old to make that sacrifice for somebody who might be in middle school when you think you can go to the NFL or the NBA and do so by playing at other schools. So it really is a chicken or an egg argument for me.
Well, I think, Gary, you made a good point, too. I'm sorry to cut you, but when you said players owning their rights now in college, we're going to see what that does, too.
That might help.
Yeah, that's going to turn into heat.
Let's not talk about it now. That's the next part of the series. We're going to talk about that because I want to know how the money's going to affect the HBCUs. Forget the Power 5 schools. Now that athletes can make money off their own likeness in certain places, is that going to take away from HBCUs? Don't answer it.
I wanted to piggyback off home team just because as soon as HBCUs realize that, all right, if we take maybe a little bit, and I get with everything with COVID, you got furloughs and all the rest of that, but this is a perfect time to actually look at your budget and be like, hey, we see where athletics can go. Yep. We see players actually wanting to come to HBCUs, but they have their demands as well. If you have adequate facilities, if you have adequate programs, adequate gear, look, we'll come. And as soon as we draw that attention and the athletes and the talent back to HBCUs, then you'll start seeing, CBS will be like, all right, well, Alabama ain't got as much talent as they had. And history kind of repeats itself. So you were talking about USC coming down and beating Alabama. It's the same thing, just in a new generation. And you would see when this happens that you'll start getting a lot more money pumped back into HBCUs.
And you guys mentioned something earlier about TV contracts, and I want to talk about that too. When it comes to McCour, he was touted, or he mentioned something about, I forget the guy's name. I think it was like Wesley, but he's like he comes out in 2023. His mom played softball at Hampton. And
Mikey Williams.
Mikey Williams, I'm sorry, I said Wesley, excuse me. Mikey Williams, and his mom played softball at Hampton, and he expressed interest in going to an HBCU. And my thing is, when you have McCour calling out Williams, talking about, hey, join this HBCU movement, how can that, if a few of them came together, like the Fab Five did for Michigan, what would happen if they came together, 2, 3, maybe even 4 of them, and played at an HBCU together? Could that change the dichotomy? Could that change this conversation and put the power back into the HBCU's hands when it comes to marketing and TV contracts and endowments? Could that happen if more than one elite Black athlete decided to say, we're going to play at the HBCU together? What do you guys think would happen?
It would be.
The NBA, they're going to get rid of that one and done rule because the NBA are tied together, and that's the only reason they'll get rid of it. They'll be like, oh, you're not going to keep disrespecting Coach K and Coach Calipari and not be going to those schools. So guess what? That one and done, we're going to let y'all go straight to the league. Y'all ain't going to play all that. It'll be interesting, but and I think everybody's alluded to this, we are at the point now where we don't own enough of our own resources. And it's a chicken or egg thing. I agree with that thing with home team, totally about that.
Tell me about it, Glaze. I got to buy my hair from Asian people.
That
doesn't make any sense.
We don't have enough products. I couldn't find, you're right, I couldn't find products.
I had to go. Got hair.
It's a lot of health
Sorry,
things going on
sorry,
in this thing. You got hair and hats and all kind of stuff going on.
I didn't even know home team hair could grow. I didn't even know.
I didn't know the home team came with the fro. I was like, I wasn't ready for this. Threw me out.
Damn, show off.
Yeah. You got a good hairline and everything. But
Y'all over here wearing hats and balls.
yeah, we high now.
He get edged up and everything. Damn,
I'm a little jealous.
But I'm sorry, Glaze. I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue.
No. But I think it's. I would love to say that it would make a difference, but I still don't know by us not owning enough of our own media. ESPN shows HBCU games on delay. They film the game and they show it at 8 p.m. at night or 9 p.m. at night on a different channel. We don't see it live. We don't see it. We have to catch it on ESPN.com. Yeah, at night. It is not going to be live.
Glaze, y'all know, y'all always picking me how I like to hang out, right? Remember when I used to be the sideline reporter for the Dream? I used to go to Cafe Circa after the games, and I would see myself on Fox Sports at 2 a.m. At 2 o'clock in the morning, and people look at me and go like, "That's you," and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know why they playing it right now," but that's the time that they showed it at. Like, so I agree with you when it comes to Black athletes as well as women, or sports that aren't, I guess, wanting to be viewed by the most popular people. We just don't get the airtime that we deserve. And my whole thing is, I just feel like when it comes to these elite athletes choosing, HBCUs, that could change the narrative. And I think it will change the narrative.
Well, then we also have to do our part too. We got to watch the games. We got to go to the games when there is an HBCU game, because it's all about the numbers. You can't, they're not going to put games on TV that nobody's watching because nobody's watching the advertisement. So then we have to do our part. I'm really interested to see now that players can get paid off their name, their image, and their likeness, if that will have any impact, because I would think it's much easier, I think, to get a smaller group of people to put a group of people on a football or basketball team and direct funds to that than to try to see how you can raise $50 million in 2 seasons. Alabama's weight room cost $80 million. We're talking about the money that Morehouse got in donations. Their weight room cost $80 million for the weight room. There's no way you can compete with that.
Crazy.
They are winning the arms race. It's an arms race. So I think we have to do our part when games are on and watch them. When bowl games come to different towns, go to the bowl games. When the classics come, travel to the classic games to kind of help with the numbers, because, ultimately the numbers are going to drive and money is going to drive bigger funnels of money to get down to HBCU coffers.
Yeah, but when a player like McClure chooses Howard, I mean, you're gonna watch, right? I mean,
gotta go to the games.
Not drive that as well as bringing those elite athletes in there drives people wanting to watch the games. I mean, what do you think about it, Gary? Like,
let me put it this way: if you get the athletes, you get the talent there, people will come to the games. On the other hand, it's the school's responsibility, and the school has a bit of a responsibility as far as getting people there. So one, I think kind of what we talked about, facilities, but I mean, field maintenance. Like Morehouse, they finally upgraded their field recently, but that was out of, Football Alumni Association's budget. That wasn't out of, any of the donations they got. But they just got the zero laser field regraded. But I mean, it's small things. Redoing the track, redoing painting. Yeah. Just the small touches you could do to bring people in.
And now, when we're talking about responsibility, whose responsibility is it to get elite Black athletes back to HBCUs? I look at McClure's story. Now, this is a brother who was born in Kenya. He was partially raised in Australia and California, went to prep school in Arizona. And so, and y'all might not like me on this one, but I have to ask the question. Does this brother appreciate Black culture and where we came from because he is from Africa, basically? Or, my whole thing is I don't see a lot of Americanized Black men choosing to make decisions like this based on culture and driving our culture. And so I kind of wanted to get you guys' opinion on that. Does that have anything to do with it? Him being raised somewhere. And I mean, Australia is not Black, but at the end of the day, I feel like he appreciates Black culture a little bit better because he's not from here. Do you guys think that has anything to do with it?
I'm gonna tell a funny story and about Howard. I had a kid I coached a good little while ago, and Howard was one of his choices. I said, dude, I promise you this. If you go to the camp, you go visit the campus, you're going to commit. By Sunday, you're going to commit. He called me like Saturday afternoon. He was like, Coach, I'm committing today. I said, that's what happened to Mr. Maker. I'm gonna leave it at that. Howard is a special place. Howard is a special place.
Do you think homecoming got?
And I think we have to all, I think Morehouse does a great job of prestige and image and how Morehouse is projected outside the walls of Atlanta. And I think, your pitch, making sure your pitch, you could have, the truth is you can have fun anywhere you go to school. You can get a great education anywhere you go to school. It's the pitch. And so, Tuskegee, I know some of the smartest people I've ever run into have come out of Tuskegee University. I don't know what their pitch is. So, being prepared to have your pitch for a supremely talented player that could choose anywhere on the planet Earth to go play or not play, go overseas.
And he chose
play,
you. Mm-hmm.
And they want to go somewhere. They can go to one place. Being prepared to have your pitch in place, I think, is something that HBCUs as a whole should look to do, because this could be an incredible opportunity when you're having somebody with that kind of 5-star clout. He could have gone anywhere, and that is something that is historic what he did and where he decided to go. And just have your pitch ready is one of the things that I would advise HBCUs and people who have the resources and the recruiting budgets to get those guys in front of them. Make the pitch, have it, and pitch it right.
And Makor, he basically said, I quote, he goes, I was the first to announce my visit to Howard, and others started to dream, what if? I need to make the HBCU movement real so others will follow. And he put that on Twitter. And to me, that meant a lot, because as an 18-year-old kid, you're saying or stating something that people who are 50, 60 years old still won't state. You got people in the NFL, the WNBA, the NBA who won't commit to the Black cause like this 18-year-old child is doing. And so it just made me wonder why he made that decision. I know he said it was community, and I know Maceo, you said it might have been homecoming, but I'll start off with me, and I want to ask you guys, why did you all decide to commit to the schools that you were committed to? Because this conversation is going to keep going. We're not done with this, but I just wanted to get you guys' pitch on this. And the reason why I chose Georgia Tech is because I wanted to go to a top tier school. I wanted to go to a D1 school that was competitive in basketball, but that was also competitive in, real life. I wanted a degree that meant something, and I knew it was an engineering school. So my choice for choosing Georgia Tech was based off of both academics and athletics. Not every student's going to make that decision. So Gary, why did you choose to go to Furman?
I mean, my biggest decision, I guess, I didn't have any Power 5 offers or any big D1 offers. So FCS was the next biggest, and I still had, in my head, I was like, all right, my dad played for the Falcons, so of course I had my dream of playing in the NFL, and that gave me the proper platform, and they had recruiting, I guess plenty of talent come out of Furman and out of the Southern Conference, and then as well as Furman just being, a pristine school up in
very good school. Mm-hmm.
So that was my biggest factor driving that.
No.
Yeah. Mace?
For me, my mom's a Morris Brown graduate. My principal at my high school, Morris Brown graduate. My dad went to Bishop College. He was an HBCU guy. So all I knew was HBCUs. And even though I was recruited pretty good, and I kind of messed it up myself because I was being a jerk at 18. Who knew?
That's what 18-year-olds do.
Yeah, but yeah, for me, it was always going to be probably end up being HBCU because that's all I knew.
Yeah, for me, it was either Morris Brown, South Carolina State. I had Georgia Tech on there, but at the end of the day, I just
You
wanted
want
to
to do
get
no
out.
work over there. You
I
want
won't
to
go do it. Nah, I was gonna do no work. It's gonna be a and you know, and I told everybody it was the best decision I made. You know, I thought I wanted to go, but I was from a country town, a little small town, and I just wanted to get out. I just wanted to go to Atlanta, and Morris Brown was in the heart. Now it was a little scary over there sometimes, but I love my HBCU. I wouldn't take it back. You know, my daughter goes to Savannah State now, so it's something that I feel like we're passing down to it. My other daughter wants to go to HBCU, so it was just I couldn't have imagined a person who was from a small town being embraced by anything or more. I couldn't have seen me going to a big campus like a Georgia who had 35,000 students or anything like that. I needed that 3,000 private school, and then I was part of the AUC family. And that meant a lot to me too, to see what we had in that little area over there. It didn't look big, but it was 5 schools in that little area. And we were all, you know, I saw somebody pull out the book that we used to use to go to the cross classes and things like that. And that was just,
Gave me anxiety. Gave me anxiety.
it was just something different, man. So that's why, you know, and I didn't go to play sports first. I went there for the academic scholarship, but I lost my country mind in Atlanta. So I had to play sports as a.
He did. Sharon Showcase.
Oh,
boy.
Yeah, boy, it
Road.
was bad.
Another conversation.
It was bad.
Yeah.
And home team, you in Morehouse. Why'd you choose Morehouse?
Well, for me, I was legacy. You know, my father left North Carolina, and he actually got a ride down to Atlanta. NFL referee Jerome Boger, his father was a teacher in North Carolina, and he was making a trip to Atlanta, and he drove my father down to Morehouse. And in doing so, my daddy decided to go there, and he ingrained us. When I was a kid, we would go to Morehouse games, Morehouse events. So being, you know, a legacy, my brother went to Morehouse. When my brother and I were kids, we would tease because we knew we were probably going to Morehouse, but we would tease my dad and be like, watch this. Daddy, I think I want to go to Bethune-Cookman. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't go to Bethune-Cookman.
Well, you about to get cut off, boy.
Yeah,
Like
boy.
he's saying, I want to be a dope.
You gonna get shanked.
You can go where you want to go. My money's going to Morehouse, is what he said. But yeah,
Do what you want.
it goes back to, you know, just like kids who go to Ole Miss because their parents went, just like people go to Georgia and Georgia Tech because their parents went. I went. My mother went to North Carolina A&T, so she's an Aggie. So I grew up
Aggie pride.
A&T. So I grew up in a family that went to HBCUs, and so it's what I saw. And when I took a trip for myself, before the end of my junior year in high school, I got a chance to get on campus, and you get to see the president, you get to see the provost, you get to see the SGA, and they're people who look like you. You get to see the football team and the football coach, and they look like you. You get to see Mahogany in motion, and they look like the ladies you want to try to go talk to. And so it's what you see, and it's what you're exposed to, and when you get exposed to it. I think a lot of times, you know, I would ask a guy that's sitting on a bench in Idaho or Wyoming or, you know, in Arizona somewhere, the third string linebacker or the second string running back, wouldn't you like to come to downtown Atlanta and, you know, play linebacker and run the football or play quarterback? You would have one heck of a time. You would get one heck of an education. And one heck of a support system as well.
Well, all I know is when it comes to my child and my daughter, and if she pledged, she better not go Delta. She better play Big A.
Oh boy.
Anyway.
Oh boy, yeah.
Why do you tell me about them AKA fees? Huh?
Yeah, I'm staying out of that.
See, you ain't got to go there. We wear heels. That's why. Anyway, Blaze, Maceo, I know y'all got a show that y'all got to do.
Too much money.
Home team, Gary, Blaze, Maceo, shut up. Thank you guys for coming on. This is going to be continued. We're not done with this conversation.